Okay, it looks like the numbers have stabilized a little bit, so we're going to get started with tonight's presentation. Thank you very much for joining us. We're excited to have you on board as future global navigators. So tonight's panel is going to consist of myself. I'm Matt Redman. I'm the Vice President for High School Abroad Programs. Bill Bull is going to speak with us. He's the Vice President of Risk Management for all of CIEE. And Laragh Kavanaugh, who's our Director of Program Management for High School Abroad Programs. We're going to try to give you a little bit of information that's helpful and can help you plan and make great decisions as we go. So the first thing that we want to make sure that you know is pat yourselves on the back. Getting a scholarship on the Global Navigator program is always a very competitive and selective process. So be really proud of what you've achieved by earning a scholarship and by gaining a foothold into a worldwide experience that can really be something that changes your life. This year is especially extraordinary. The courage to apply or to maintain your position on the program. You should be very proud that you've gotten this far and that you're moving along. The world has been a challenging place, coming up on a year now. Flexibility is an important part. We're gonna base this whole presentation on understanding flexibility. So flexibility with preparation, flexibility with expectations, flexibility with programs. We want you to know that CIEE will work to provide an excellent program, and it's important on your part to maintain a flexible mindset, which is a core tenet of intercultural learning, which is what we pride ourselves on here at CIEE. What we're going to cover today, we are going to make sure that you have an update on health and safety, both perspective from around the world, how we're looking at COVID programs, how we're looking at the worldwide situation, taking country to country, city to city into consideration, and what you need to know to prepare. So we are adapting programs, conditions around the world for entry, exit, living conditions, they all will fluctuate up and down in the coming months. We want you to know that if there are significant changes, we will communicate with you and about the adaptations that we have to do to provide a program that's both exciting, interesting, fun, as well as safe to participate in and keeps everyone involved together. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Bill Bull. Thank you, Bill.
Great. Thank you, Matt. And Bill here. I'm going to walk us through some of let you guys know what we're looking at when we start considering about how we're going to run a program, where we're going to run a program, what the conditions are on the ground. Mostly sort of what are the COVID conditions on the ground, that we do track everything else. I've been doing this for just about 8 years here now with CIEE and did this kind of work with the Peace Corps before. I promise not to treat students as if they're Peace Corps volunteers heading out into small villages in the middle of nowhere. However, we still have the same concept of a duty of care and making sure everyone's okay. We know COVID's everywhere and we know it's a pandemic. And one of the things we started doing, it's coming up on a year, April 13th, was we started doing a risk index of conditions on the ground in each location. And we made an index and a metric for what are the safety metrics that are in place, what framework is in there, and what are the risks that are there that gave us a number. And then we started doing a comparison. We do it weekly. We publish this bi-weekly, and we sort of show this over time how conditions in each of our locations and locations we've operated on or nearby neighboring locations, what's happening there. We added into it as well a recency index, what's been going on in the past 2 weeks, to sort of understand not just what the health conditions are and how relatively risky or not risky any location may be, but also how is it doing most recently. We've also added into this concept, though, since it's everywhere around the world, how does this compare with various states in the US? And this was taken this morning, this recency report, talking about where things are in the US writ large, but that doesn't really tell the full picture. When we start looking at sort of levels of presence of the disease, most recently the past 2 weeks, the US is, I'll show you another slide in a moment, we're down to sort of on an average of the past 2 weeks below 500 cases per 100,000. What does that compare with what's going on in Morocco? What does that compare with what's going on in England? I mean, different places are in the news, but also how does it compare with your state? Certainly, currently today, Iowa is showing a large increase in cases for today, this past week, but different states have seized that honor. But one of the things we want you to think about is sort of in deciding to go or not go, where are you going from? Are you going from a place of low levels of COVID in your community to a place of higher level? What's acceptable for you? What isn't? And certainly, we can certainly say that pretty much we have a program in a country around the world that is conditions are better currently than they are. But I did want to show, when I pulled this up, sort of, we gave a presentation. I prepared this a month ago for another group. And what a difference a month makes. A month ago, we were looking at, even the scale itself, we had to bump it up to measure all the way out to 2,000 as a standard. And now we're measuring, we don't even get that high. We're barely over 1,000 in our worst case. The US is now below 500, whereas just a month ago it was over 1,000. Conditions are changing. I mean, happily, we're seeing there is a decrease for much of the world right now. And certainly the US is doing well on that. That's something we're tracking. We're trying to understand and make sure that we're not going to put anyone in harm's way. That's always our goal. We operate when we're there, and so these are some of the conditions that are at play that have made a difference in reducing the impact of sort of, at this point, you guys are probably all well versed with these fundamentals, but we apply them well in all of our programs about the social distancing, making sure we're paying attention to proximity, cleanliness, hand washing, avoiding large groups, wearing the face mask, and of course we pay attention to ventilation. And certainly for summer programs, we're going to be outside as much as we possibly can. Collectively, for those of you who've seen this, I just like this model. It's a nice, the Swiss cheese model of it's no one thing makes the significant difference. It's the cumulative effects of physical distancing and ventilation and masks and hygiene and all that adds up to make sure that any individual has the least likelihood of getting COVID-19. We work hard to ensure all the students are advised of what their roles are. We train our staff to protect themselves. And of course, we coordinate with local authorities that our plans and structures fit within their requirements so that there are no surprises there for anyone. We've been doing this for a while now. We ran programs starting in August, and we ran about 2,400 participants through our doors from August until December. And then a whole new set of people are on program that started in January till now, about another 1,300. So we're looking at about 3,500 students and participants have gone through our programs and what our protocols and what we've set up. What we've learned, a couple of things is, hey, if a country or there's an instruction sent out about what you're supposed to do in order to be permitted to board the plane or be permitted to land in the country, they're pretty darn strict. If there's an instruction that says you have to have your testing within 72 hours, it's not near 72 hours. It's not almost 72 hours. 74 work better for your schedule. No, 72 hours or less. They just won't let you in. We've done a fair amount of work with trying to make sure the students really, and everyone participating, understands the social contract of, we're responsible for each other's wellness, that we have to support each other. And getting buy-in on that has been critical because that means that the groups can help support each other and we can prevent having any outbreak or anything going through an entire cohort or group. We have learned over time that our biggest exposure, we've had some cases out of the 3,500 we've had about 5 on program, but another 20 were all caught through the pre-testing process, either before they got on the plane or after they landed. So we operate and we go through isolation at first and some quarantine at first to make sure that we're not spreading it amongst each other or spreading it from students to staff or students to host families, that we have to be careful at first to make sure that we're following proper isolation procedures. And again, you got to understand that overseas in each of the locations, the U.S. has had a fairly open standard when it comes to protocols and recommendations and guidelines, but certainly many other countries have added significant teeth to those guidelines. Failure to comply is perhaps an immediate on-the-spot fine, or a further financial penalty that comes right to you. For example, you're on a train in Germany and you're not wearing your mask. The guy that collects your tickets says, and you owe 50 euros more because you're not wearing your mask. Give me your credit card or we're going to the police station. They just don't mess around. So we will, of course, tell everyone what that is, but they will fine and they will act from there. So we have to understand that, and that's something you agree to when you're going abroad. Travel realities, no surprises here. Airlines, airports, there are new rules in place. Again, the US has them, coming back has them. There's all sorts of things. We are aware that the transit process inside the airports represent a point of exposure. Airlines have done a pretty phenomenal job of reducing outbreaks on planes and exposures on planes, but the transit process itself is something to pay attention to. I put my own kid on a plane last week to fly to Los Angeles. She went on with a mask and she also went on with a face shield. And she's been tested twice since arriving and she's fine. So it's, good. You need to pay attention to these and pay attention to any changes. We'll let you know what those are. And of course, if these days it seems to be most planes, most airlines, most countries are requiring proof of a negative test before you board the plane. And the US has now imposed that for anyone returning. I threw the last point here about planning and over planning being critical, that you really don't assume it's business as normal, that you prepare for what's going to happen. We are aware over our history, sometimes parents like to fly over and pick up their kids and then travel around a little bit on their own. If you're going to be doing that, you got to pay a lot of attention, especially into the bit of you're going to need tested before you return. If you test positive or one of your party tests positive, what will you do? Who will stay behind? Who will take care of whom? And how will you change your tickets? We will, of course, if a student tests positive, we will continue our duty of care and make sure that they're taken care of and arrange for retesting and arrange for them to get to the airport. For any of you, though, that are planning to do any outside traveling or traveling on your own, that's something you might want to consider. Insurances can help, but some of it mostly is planning and making sure you have all the right numbers, right contacts, and the right kind of tickets. But they'll talk a little more about that as we move forward. So I'm going to turn this over to Lara and leave time for questions. Lara, are you all set?
Hi, thanks, Bill. Yeah, I'm ready. Hello, everyone. I'm Laragh Kavanaugh. I'm the Director of Program Management for the Global Navigator High School team. I'm here with a big team behind me to help you all get ready to travel and to answer any questions that you have prior to departure for your program. Also, we'll be helping you prepare and get ready through your My CIEE account and also through email updates. So let's get into the next slide. So you are all going all around the world this summer. We are very hopeful that we'll be able to run a lot of programs in these destinations. However, as Bill said, we're constantly monitoring entry requirements and COVID-related cases and management of COVID in each country. If CIEE deems it's unsafe to travel to a country, or if the entry requirements do not permit short-term high school programs to run, we will unfortunately have to make the decision to cancel a program. So we'll have more information for you in mid-March about our first review. If there's any locations that will not be able to run, we'll let you know. And then we'll give you some options to transfer to other programs that we are running. And I'll get into the other options of that in the next slide. So this is really exciting. I want to talk about what you can expect. So as Bill outlined, this is a very different year for travel. So international travel is stressful no matter what, but now we add a global pandemic into the mix, and there's a lot to think about. There are a lot of new rules to follow. And these rules are also changing, and they will be different per country. So we need your help to stay on top of things, but we will also do our best to stay on top of entry requirements and educate you along the way. So CIEE will not be requiring students to be vaccinated in order to travel on our program. Currently, there's no vaccination requirement to enter another country. I think it's a little too early to have that requirement in our world, given the vaccine rollout. So you can, rest assured that that won't be part of your process, I don't think. If it is, we'll let you know as soon as we know. We will require students to get tested for COVID with a PCR test, usually 72 hours before travel. However, there are some countries that need it to be 48 hours prior to travel. So we'll talk with you more about that as the time gets near for departure. You'll need to be able to schedule that and pay for that test yourself. We also ask that students limit their exposure and quarantine in their own house with just their immediate family prior to departure to limit the chances that you would contract COVID and then unfortunately not be able to participate in our program. The first 7 days of our programs, we will be asking every student to do a soft isolation, which means that if you live with a host family, or you'll be going to that host family home and you'll be taking online classes for the first 7 days of the program, you will be going out and doing activities with your peers, but you'll have a smaller group or a pod that will be your group of 10 to 15 students that you interact with. At least for the first 7 days. If the government changes or requires an extended quarantine that's much more strict or longer than 7 days, CIEE will have to likely cancel that program because our 3 to 4 week programs are just too short to have you isolate for longer than 7 days. So as far as housing, what we've arranged for this summer is that each student, no matter if you're in a dorm or a homestay, you'll have your own bedroom. So you won't share your bedroom with a host family member or another student. And we will screen host families, as we do every year, very thoroughly. We'll coach them through our expectations around COVID safety, encourage them to also limit interactions with others for the first 10 days before you arrive. We'll encourage them also to not invite visitors into their home while you're in the home to lessen the risk of you contracting COVID from outside visitors. We also will require that if someone is exposed to COVID, that whole family, including the student, will need to isolate for a period of time until we deem it safe, or doctor deems it safe for the student and the family to then open back up. So we have contingency plans in place, and we will coach host families, train host families through this process. We are not going to be requiring host families to get tested for COVID prior to students' arrival, and we will not be requiring host families to be vaccinated in order to host. So as far as class time, some of you may be in person class right now in the US in your classrooms. We're following a similar model. Everyone will need to wear masks for weeks 2, 3, and 4. Ideally, you'll be in person in class with your peers, masks on, with proper distancing in the classrooms, 6-foot distancing. We're taking steps to make sure that the classrooms are ventilated and that we're following local guidelines and standards for each country to be safe in regards to COVID. If there is an outbreak in your group, in your pod of 10 to 15 students, we will need to be prepared to shift back to online classes. So you would go back to your host family's home and log in online to take classes and then isolate until we feel it's safe for you to come back in person. Excursions, we want you to do excursions. We know this is a huge highlight of the program, and we want you to be able to see and experience the cultures that you're in this summer. As Bill said, we're going to try to schedule as many of our excursions outdoors as possible, and we will stay in small groups and maintain the social distance that is required to keep people as safe as possible. You will be taking public transportation. We'll require masks for every bit of transportation. And we always have to be flexible, as Matt said, and adapt to how things look in June or July when you are departing. So we will continue to update you if excursions or activities need to change. We will be doing day trips, no overnights this summer, but we will have fun activities planned for you. So many of you are wondering, well, what if my program is the program that gets canceled, or what if I don't want to go? So we do have a detailed program assurance policy outlined on our website. Maybe one of my colleagues will add it to the chat box. But basically, for you to know, if CIEE reviews the program location, it decides it's unsafe or it's impossible to get high school students into the country this summer, then we will have to cancel the program. If we let you know that your program is canceled, you'll have 3 options. You'll be able to transfer to another program that has space traveling this summer. You can defer and travel with us in summer 2021, or you can get a refund. So again, that's if CIEE cancels your program destination. If your program, the fundamental components of your program change drastically before departure, these would be other reasons that you would be entitled to transfer, defer, or receive a refund if you decide to not travel at all with us this summer. Those essential components that we, if they're changed, we feel would significantly impact your experience and the type of program that you originally signed up for are if your homestay is canceled on your language and culture program, if classes have to be online for the entire 4 weeks of your program, or if self-isolation upon arrival is longer than 7 days required by the government or required by other safety measures. So these would be reasons where we would reach out to you. We would let you know that something has dramatically changed in your program, and we'll talk to you about the options. So the next steps for you now in February, I want to outline what's the plan as we move ahead. So in March and April, we want you to keep working on your pre-departure tasks. So many of you, as you move into a confirmed status, you'll see that there are more tasks that we ask you to complete. So please log in and check your CIEE account. In March, we'll be sending out an update about things to consider when booking your flight. We still ask that you do not book flights yet, and please wait for the green light from CIEE to go ahead and book your flight. And again, we'll be sending you much more detailed information, and there'll be a reading in your CIEE account by next week with information about the flight process this summer. In April, we'll ask language and culture students to log in virtually to take a pre-departure language assessment. It's not a test, it's more of an assessment to see where your language level is before your program, and then you'll take that test again at the end of your program. So we'll invite you to do that and send an email about that. April 14th is when your final payments are due and your full balance for the program. And also we need your college credit payment. If you do choose to get college credit for your summer program, you would need to decide that and pay us by April 14th. In May, we'll be arranging a pre-departure orientation webinar, much like this, for your cohort going to your location with our local center staff. and our program leaders who will be accompanying you on the program. So stay tuned for that invite. You'll get to know all the ins and outs of the country and the city that you're specifically going to, and meet the staff that will be there to support you during the program. And about 1 to 2 weeks before you depart, you'll receive your homestay placement, the name, phone number, address, and some details about your host family. And then you can start to connect with them and reach out if you want to meet and talk virtually before you arrive. So in order to make all of this possible, the best thing you can do, and the next thing that you need to do, is accept your scholarship award if you received a scholarship. So in order to do that, you simply need to log into your CIEE account by March 3rd, which is next Wednesday, and pay your acceptance deposit, and then fill out the 2 tasks. Do you have a passport? Yes or no? And fill out some health and wellness questions so we have a better idea of your health. If you don't have a passport right now, very important to please apply for one immediately, tomorrow, because passport processing times are taking much longer than normal. So you need a lot of time for this. Flight booking, as I mentioned, we'll send you an email in mid-March with more instructions about what the flight process will look like this year. We work with a travel agent partner called FlightFox, and they will have all of the information about the best itineraries and flight options for you to travel as a group. This is important to remember. All international flights will need to be direct into the country this year to avoid any issues with entry requirements during your layover in a third country. So if you're traveling to Madrid for a language and culture program and you live in Boston, we want you to fly directly to Madrid and not through Amsterdam on a layover and then to Madrid. So all flights should be direct to the country that you're going to this summer. We'll give you more information about arrival windows so that our CIEE staff can pick you up. So stay tuned for that. And then also good to know, this is why we're encouraging you to wait to book your flight, is that you are responsible for paying for your flight. And if for some reason your program gets canceled or something changes and you don't want to travel, you need to understand the airline's refund or change policies, and then pay for any change fees that are incurred because of uncertainty with the program. Lastly, we'll be enrolling you in, I would say around early April, in an online pre-departure course through a platform called Canvas. Students will be enrolled and you will take a course. It will take about 4 hours total to do the course, but you'll have from early April to mid-May to complete it. So plenty of time. We'll go over program rules, what to expect on travel day, your host family, health safety training, talking about technology, budgets, and much more. Also, you'll be able to chat and communicate with your peers and start to get to know your cohort of students who are traveling to the same country as you in this Canvas course. So that's all we have for a presentation. Hopefully that answered some of your questions, but we're happy to open it up now and take general questions or talk more in specific about certain common questions that we're seeing come up.
This is Pierre from the background. There's a lot of questions around host family safety, like why shouldn't host family be tested, and placement in host family, can I be with a friend? Our program leader is also going to be in host family. So if you could talk more about host family safety, there's a lot of questions about that.
Bill, will you start with the first part, why host families are not tested?
So we had some issues. We looked into this and we thought about doing this, and we're certainly encouraging families to be tested. We cannot require it. It's a question of local law and in privacy concerns. So families can elect to or not. I think more importantly that, you know, we know this is pandemic, so it's everywhere. The possibility that a family had already had it is fairly high. We ask them to self-isolate and quarantine themselves, and we won't put anyone in a family that is symptomatic, just like we don't want you to get on a plane if you are symptomatic. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge for us all to get that arranged, and certainly if there's a last minute change, we have extra host families, all of whom are committed to maintaining safe practices before they have students come into their home. But even once you're in the home, you're going to be under isolation from them as well, in-home isolation for the first couple of days, to make sure that, you know, you didn't develop something in between getting tested yourself before you got on a plane and then landing. So there's a buffer in there of time and space and safety for you all.
Yeah, and one other thing I would add is that we're going to avoid placing students in host families' homes who work as medical workers, because they will have more direct contact with patients and possible exposure to COVID. So we will, avoid that. As far as homestay placements and how we make them, and can you request roommates? As I said, everyone's getting a single room in your homestay. We do have a host family task in your My CIEE account where you fill out more information about who you are, and your any allergies, but also kind of what your personality is like. We use that information to match you up with a host family that we feel like is a good match for you, for your personality and your interests. There is space in there that you can make a request. We can't guarantee that you'll be placed with your friend, but you can feel free to always write in any requests in that task.
Can you talk about technology, Lara? There were some questions around if I don't are we required to bring a laptop for the first week of class, etc.? Yeah,
so we are strongly encouraging everyone to find a way to bring a laptop and a headset for the program, because the first week will be virtual. It's very important that you have that. It could also be a smartphone. So while it's ideal to have a laptop, if you have a smartphone, that can be acceptable too. So one or the other. If you don't have either, I would ask you to please reach out to us at hsabroad@ciee.org. Let us know your situation and we'll work with you.
Do we want to talk about COVID scenarios if I get sick on program, if borders close, kind of like worst case billable scenarios?
Yeah, the things I spend all my time on. Yes, I'm happy to talk about that. So I didn't show you our convoluted chart that we have developed, we trained our staff to, that details, in accordance with both CDC, the European Center for Disease Control, as well as WHO standards around what we do if someone is confirmed positive, suspected, close contact, or even close contact of a close contact. As we guys, I'm sure we've all been through this when you've been in school and you've seen lots of things. So, the first thing we do is, this is a medical condition, and happily the insurance we're affording you treats this as a medical condition. It's not an exclusion, it's fully protected and covered. And typically what happens is you'll be isolated, asked to isolate, asked to let us know about who you've been in contact with. Have you been unmasked anywhere? We need complete and total disclosure and honesty there, so we can make sure everyone is safe. And then we follow the standards that are established by the public health guidelines of the CDC has a 10-day standard of isolation, and you are released if you are symptom-free after 10 days and fever-free. If you have worsening medical conditions, we will assure you of medical care. One of our chief concerns is there COVID? Our chief concern that we're tracking oh so carefully is, what is the quality and caliber of medical care, and can we get you medical care? So if you need medical care, we'll get you medical care and get you attention. There are issues around if you're a close contact, someone, as we know, that's been defined as within spending time more than 15 minutes over a 24-hour period with someone with confirmed COVID. So at which point there's an isolation that goes in place, symptom monitoring, you do some online coursework, and if your symptoms are then free, you're then released once that time period is released. Again, some countries have different time frames on this. Most of them are in the 7 to 10 day range, and all that is also slightly changing. We're paying very strict attention to at what point can you be tested and released versus just symptom free. Currently, it's you get tested around day 7, released at day 10, or tested at day 5, released at day 7. Depends on where you are and how you're going. Borders. So that one gets interesting in terms of, one of the reasons in the past other programs have done some you do part of your program in country X and then you go to country Y. Well, that becomes a problem because of borders. It seems that national authorities are still in the mode of, if there's a concern, they close their borders some to new visitors. They don't stop people from leaving. And certainly the US standard has always been, even at the worst of all this, is that American citizens can return home. So we have every reason to believe that'll be true. Certainly in last fall, we had, 9,000 students to return in the space of 3 weeks. Despite craziness around border issues, we made sure all of them got home, up to and including chartering flights as we needed to. So you're not going to get stranded overseas. Airlines are committed to that. Governments are committed to that. And the US is saying, yeah, provided you have a test, come on home.
So Bill, would you mind going back to the slide about refunds and program assurance policy?
Sure. Just take me a moment.
Yep. Oh,
I'll get
yeah,
there.
just past it. There. Perfect. Yeah, so I just want to outline this one more time. I see some questions about payments. So just to reiterate, if you want to pay and confirm your spot in the program, either you or your child can log into the My CIEE account and go to the acceptance deposit task, and you pay via the online bill pay section. So that's how you pay. And if you want to pay the full program balance, you need to have a statement first, and we'll be getting those ready for you soon. So stay tuned in the next week or so. We'll have that ready for you to pay the full balance. As far as cancellation, I saw some questions like if I want to cancel now and I'm uncomfortable, you can cancel now or anytime you feel uncomfortable with travel. The program deposit is non-refundable, but if you have paid the full program balance at this time, we would refund you minus the $1,000 deposit. If, as we move forward, you're comfortable, but then let's say in May you start to feel uncomfortable, between May 1st and May 25th, we would give you a 50% refund of what you've paid. And after May 25th, there will be no eligibility for a refund. So that's also outlined in your terms and conditions that you signed in the My CIEE account, but I just wanted to reiterate that. And then there was another question about the first 7 days of your program with the host family, what that would look like. I think Bill mentioned a few things, but you'll be wearing your mask. You'll be isolating somewhat from your host family. You'll be logging into online classes in your bedroom. You'll be going out hopefully once a day to meet with your small CIEE pod of 10 to 15 students and an adult, a CIEE staff member, to do outdoor activities, get to know the city, see sites, and things like that. And then if by day 7, no one is showing symptoms of COVID within your pod, then you'll be free to start in-person classes in the CIEE classroom space with your group of 10 to 15.
The details of what those activities actually are, let's be very clear, you're not going to be able to go out and join a soccer game for 5 hours. Every country has degrees of which they allow people to get some outdoor activity and some exercise during that isolation period. You're not just locked behind a room with the door locked and food slid under your door with a glass of water and a slice of bread and wait 7 days. All activities will be in comportment with whatever the local regulations are. Dublin, you weren't allowed more than 2 kilometers from your home under Tier 5 restrictions. Other places, it's a different level, but it'll all be tailored to the location and what the requirements are there.
Any other questions, CIE team, that you think would be helpful for Bill and I to speak about?
Maybe a quick recap on group flights, how that process works. There's a lot of questions about that as well. And the uncertainty around chaperoning, maybe.
Yeah, so again, we'll send out more details in mid-March about what that's going to look like. We will identify a group flight for each destination. And if possible, we will provide a CIE adult as a chaperone on that flight. However, we can't guarantee every group flight will be chaperoned by a CIE staff member this year, because some countries are not allowing US citizens in. However, there are workarounds for study abroad students who are traveling to the EU, for example. Many EU countries are allowing students to study abroad, but they wouldn't necessarily allow me as a flight chaperone to come into the country. So if possible, we will offer chaperone flights, but when not possible, we will offer a group flight, and we'll do our best to connect kids with each other, especially if you're from similar parts of the US, so that you can fly together as a group.
Can we give details on quarantining scenarios if you contract COVID and you live in a homestay? Would you be staying with your homestay? How would CIE care for you in that context?
Yeah, so one of the benefits of a homestay is that one of the things we've talked with every family about is, are you willing to continue to host if a student has been identified as contracting COVID? And families have all said yes. So there's a whole set of standards surrounding caring for someone in your home with COVID that we've shared out there. So you would stay in the family, again, provided you don't need medical care. Certainly, we've all seen around, even in your own communities, most people who get COVID don't require enhanced medical care, especially within this age group. So it's just a question of making sure you're not transferring it to someone else and getting someone else with a compromised immune system exposed. So you'd be in the homestay, you'd be in isolation in the homestay. You would have, again, even within that, you're generally speaking allowed to mask up and be 6 feet and go out for 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the afternoon. Again, each country has their own standard on how much they permit people in isolation to move about. But you're not going to go out and go to a concert. You're going to be in the homestay. They'll provide food for you, check in with you, we'll check in with you, and if your condition necessitates enhanced medical care, we'll make sure you get it.
Yeah, and there was a question about the pods and how we will choose your pod or form your pod of 10 to 15. For language cohort, we will group you based on your language level, so that you can have similar levels in your class. And so you'll be grouped based on your language assessment, your level of Spanish, French, whatever language you're studying. And then that will be your pod for the duration of the program. Hey, any last questions that need to be answered?
I think we'll do maybe a follow-up in writing for all the pending questions because we need to wrap up. And I think we've covered most topics that people were asking about.
Great. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope you've gotten most of your questions answered. We'll send this recording out as well as the questions that were asked and the responses in writing so everyone has them. Feel free to reach out again as more questions come up to hsabroad@ciee.org. And good luck. We hope to see you this summer.